I talk a lot about limiting beliefs and how those so deeply impacted me, and being able to identify them, accept them, and face them head on has been a huge piece of my healing journey. One of the biggest beliefs I had formed about myself was that I wasn't good enough to be truly loved. I was always trying to be fitter, be skinnier, be prettier, because I had formed this belief that's what I needed to do in order to find the relationship I was looking for. Well, holy crap, let's talk about what that actually attracts and how incredibly backwards that is. I've struggled with being 34 and single, but I've come to realize that having those beliefs about myself was putting me in no place to find any sort of healthy relationship. Through many different avenues over the last year or two, I have truly knocked down this wall, and in the process have learned to also truly enjoy and love being with myself. Sometimes I joke that I like to date myself, but it's actually kind of true. A couple weekends ago, I really wanted to go on this hike I found in Idaho Springs, and everyone I knew was busy. My initial reaction was to go to this place of feeling alone, and then I snapped myself out of it and said, F that, I don't need anyone to go on a hike with. I have myself. It ended up being just what I needed. I cherish my alone time now and use it to continue to grow and appreciate myself and all of the qualities I have to offer. And I know continuing to do that will attract more of it into my life. It might be the most cliche saying, but I now truly believe that you cannot fully love someone else until you love yourself. And with that being read, I want to welcome you back to the 127 Fit podcast. Today's guest is a nutritional therapy practitioner, health coach, podcaster, yoga instructor, and creator of Liberated Woman Method. Today's guest is Jessica Christin. Jessica, I want to welcome you to the 127 Fit podcast.
Thank you so much. I'm really excited to be here and truly honored that you reached out and asked me to come on. I'm really excited to get into our conversation today.
Absolutely. So, Jess, I'm just going to start with a warm-up, and the first question that I have for today is, do you have a morning routine, and kind of what does your morning look like to start things off?
Yeah, so I love this one because I just tweaked it a little bit, and I've been really enjoying it. It changes a little bit depending on if I work out in the morning or not, but I always wake up, splash some cold water on my face, brush my teeth, go into the kitchen. I have some supplements that I take, so I'll do that and make sure I get a nice big glass of water. I then sit down and do a 15-minute meditation. And during all this, I keep my phone in my room. I turn my phone in airplane mode at night, so don't have that on at all. And then I've added in, I didn't used to always shower in the morning, but now I've been doing a shower and doing a 2-minute cold shower, after my hot shower, which has been really nice. Yeah.
Absolutely.
After that, I get out. I have a little essential oils routine that I do. I use those quite a bit and get dressed. And then from there, I'll usually turn my phone on, check any, text or messages that have come through, computer. And then I like to do some sort of movement, even if it's just going out and doing a 5-minute walk or some stretching or whatever it is. And then, and sometimes I do work out in the morning. And in that case, I'll meditate before the workout and then do the other stuff when I get back.
Cool. Now, in regards to the cold water, is that something, I know that's like in the health and fitness industry, that's kind of something that's taken off. I know I used to take cold showers, and it literally just wakes up your brain, your body, and just kind of fires you up. Is that kind of the same experience? Is that kind of why you do that? Just kind of helps get everything kick-started for the day, or is it more of a recovery thing, or how do you kind of look at that?
Kind of all of it. I've noticed a huge difference, after I get out, and I just feel so good, much more awake and alert, but it's also amazing for your lymphatic system.
Right.
There's some studies that say it's really good for adrenal health too, and that's something I'm always super aware of. So
cool.
Yeah, it's a combination.
Yep, awesome. So second question, Jess, is do you have a favorite book, or is there a book that you like to gift often?
Yeah, I'd say I have a few that really have impacted me over the last few years that I always suggest to clients and people that are reaching out to me struggling. One would be, You're a Badass by Jen Sincero. I think that's been talked about on this podcast before.
Yeah, it's been brought up a couple times.
Ask and It Is Given by Abraham Hicks. She does a lot around just the law of attraction and how manifesting and how all of that works. And I'm a really firm believer in that. So that's a good one. And then Girl Wash Your Face by Rachel Hollis is another one I've read recently that I really enjoyed. So those are probably my top 3.
Yeah, the Rachel Hollis, I actually just listened to her on a podcast, and I think she's got maybe like 2 or 3 books out. But
yeah,
it was a great interview, and I started following her on Instagram, and I was like, this chick, she knows what she's talking about. So now, in regards to like those 3 books, maybe if you just want to focus on one, Jess, but what's maybe like one takeaway from one of those books or all 3 of those books that kind of resonates with you?
Yeah. Rachel Hollis talks a lot about getting into just like the comparison trap, and especially, I mean, I'm not a mom, but she does relate it just, to like motherhood, for example. So as a mom thinking, you have to be at all the bake sales and you have to be at all the games and you have to do all this to be a good mom. And when you're not doing those things, you feel like you're not a good mom.
Right.
And like I said, even though I'm not a mom, that just resonates with me in terms of just comparing yourself to other people and feeling like you have to live up to these certain standards, rather than really just owning and being, really confident with who you are and what your goals are and what you're trying to achieve, and like talking about those and not trying to hide behind them because you think people are going to judge you or you think that's not what you should be doing.
And I think like the whole comparison thing is something with the social media age that we're living in is probably been magnified a lot. Would you agree with that?
Oh yeah, absolutely. And she talks about in the book how she had this amazing successful business that she wouldn't talk about because she thought people would judge her for being a mom and having a family and also wanting to have a successful business. Right. So I think it's just, kind of hiding behind these amazing things that you're doing, these passions and these goals that you have because you're afraid people are going to judge you for having them.
Cool. Awesome. Thanks for sharing that.
Yeah.
All right. So, third question here, is there a favorite quote or mantra that maybe at some point in your life was very important, or maybe it's something that you carry with you every day that you wouldn't mind sharing?
Yeah, this one, I think this changes for me, just depending on where I'm at in my life and what I'm focusing on. Right now, it's, if not now, then when?
Perfect.
I just, like I was just saying, so many people are just waiting, and I don't know what they're waiting for. Waiting for, more time. Like I talk about time a lot. I'll do that when I have more time. No one's going to walk up to you and give you more time. You have to make that time. Or, the whole I'll be happy when syndrome. I'll do that when I lose the weight, or when I have the money, or when I have the job, or when I have the boyfriend. And you can sit there all day and do that.
Absolutely.
And you can sit there for years and do that. So that's one that I feel really strongly about right now.
And I actually write every day, and the writing that I just posted on my Instagram this morning was titled Go Get It. And that's something probably within the last, 6 months or less, that's kind of just been something that's settled in my heart, is like, okay, Quentin, if you want it, whatever that is, go get it.
Yeah.
Because it's like, people get, I think it's that kind of that paralysis by analysis. It's like, like you were just saying, like, if I get this, then I'll do that, and all this. It's like, no, like, if you want something and it's burning inside of your heart, like, we live in a country and in a day and age where it's like, there's a lot of opportunities and possibilities. So if you want it, you go out and get it. And it's not like our goals and our dreams and our aspirations and all that stuff that's inside of us. Like, it's not just going to happen. Like, you have to go out and make it happen. You have to go get it.
Totally.
So that's really cool.
Yeah. And I think like people just need to start, there are resources all
around
you.
Absolutely.
It's like you kind of get into this trap of like, oh, I can't do that, or that won't work, and then you start proving that to yourself.
Right.
But if you really start to open up your eyes and look outside the box and look at the amount of resources you have around you, things change a whole lot.
Absolutely. No, that's cool. I appreciate you sharing that. All right, so last question as part of the warm-up is, do you have a favorite or most listened to podcast?
Yeah, I think this kind of, I have, my podcasts that are more in like the health and wellness realm, and then I have my podcasts that are more kind of for fun.
Yep.
Mind Pump Media is one of my favorites. Those guys have really had a pretty big impact on just my health journey. And I had two of them on my podcast. They're awesome. Lots of really good information. The Genius Life by Max Lugavere is one that I really enjoy. Yeah, he just has some really cool people on there. Again, great information just about more nutrition and wellness. Great. And then there's one called Girls Gotta Eat.
Okay.
And that's more, it's just these two girls, they're both single, and they just don't care. Like they say what is on their mind. They talk about, sex and relationships and, having their own businesses and living in New York City, and they're hilarious.
Cool.
So that's the one that I really enjoy too.
All right. And while we're at it, because you are a podcaster, your own podcast, why don't you just mention the name of your podcast?
Yeah. So it's a Pure Living podcast.
Okay, cool.
And the premise behind that is kind of similar to what you're doing, is everyone has a story.
Yeah.
So.
Awesome. Very cool. All right. So, Jess, let's just kind of jump into your background, your backstory, if you don't mind. If you don't mind, just kind of talking about like where you grew up, kind of what like that home environment, some of the earlier years for you looked like. We'll kind of just move into like school, if you were involved in extracurricular activities, and maybe if you don't mind, just like maybe a couple struggles that you had when you were younger. Maybe not necessarily family related, but just maybe some personal stuff. Because even when we're younger, especially like the teenage years, there can be really some stuff that, alters the direction we go in our lives and things of that nature. So why don't we just dig in, and if you don't mind sharing a little bit of that, that'd be cool.
Yeah, totally. So I'm from right outside of Boston originally. Okay. And, up until I was 10, we lived in more of a more city-like area, if you will. So I actually went to private school up until I was 10 because the public schools, my parents didn't want to send me to the public schools in the area we were in. But they were like Montessori schools. So I was actually really exposed to a lot of different cultures and families from all around the city. And so, up until then, it was cool to be kind of engrossed in that.
Absolutely.
And then when I was 10, my parents owned a restaurant, and they decided they wanted to sell the restaurant. They wanted to move to a more suburban area. I have a younger sister. She's 4 years younger. Okay. So, yeah, they just kind of were thinking about long-term what would make more sense for us. So we moved to this kind of smaller suburban town. Everyone was pretty much white. Everyone played soccer and went to Bedford day camp. And it was just a very different environment than I was used to. And up until then, I did gymnastics. I was super into gymnastics. I was pretty good at it. It was like my passion. When we moved to Bedford, there just wasn't really a gymnastics studio that was close that worked out. And everyone in Bedford played soccer. That was like the thing, soccer or softball or whatever. Yep. So yeah, I moved there, and I think that did have a pretty big impact on me. I felt pretty out of place. People were very aware of like the brands of clothing you were wearing and things like that, which up until then it wasn't really part of my life. So after we moved there, I think I just started becoming uber aware of all of those things. I stopped doing gymnastics. I started playing soccer because everyone else did, and I hated it, and I really wasn't good at it. And so I do think that really had an impact on some of the struggles that I had down the road. That being said, I mean, it was a great town. Like, I had a really great upbringing. My parents are still together. They were together growing up. I have my younger sister, really close. We were, not wealthy by any means, but we were, well off, like I said, in this, safe neighborhood. So I have a lot of things that were amazing and that I'm really grateful for. But yeah, I think after moving there, as I became more aware of just these other, cliques and what I thought I had to do to fit in, that was sort of the beginning of my feeling really lost and just always trying to do things to try to fit in some sort of group or mold. Right. And I think that, definitely continued middle school through high school. And obviously we know those years can be tough in general because of everything you're going through. So yeah, I think that was probably my biggest struggle really was I just got really lost and didn't know who I was. And that really poured over into how I reflected myself, the relationships I had throughout high school and, even into college. So
yeah. So in regards to what you just finished talking about, like just kind of like that, maybe trying to find that self-identity and stuff. So was there kind of outside of like soccer, was there something or someone that you kind of like found yourself in during those years, or was it really just kind of like just completely being lost?
Middle school and high school, I developed a pretty solid friend group, and I'm still friends with a lot of them. So I think as I got older, I definitely had some friendships that were solid and really helped me for sure. But no, yeah, I think I in terms of just like my identity and what really drove me and what I really wanted, I was pretty lost in that. I will say I had a relationship in college. It was, my first like long-term boyfriend, not college, sorry, high school. And looking back on all of the relationships I've had in my life, that was probably the best and most healthy one that I had. So I would say that was pretty impactful. We connected on a lot of levels, and he definitely made me realize that, made me feel very valued and like loved and respected. Right. And up until then, you know, I'd been in relationships, not really had anything serious, but you know, all of them, again, I didn't really have respect for myself and my body. I think I kind of used my body to attract boys because that's what I thought you were supposed to do. For sure. I would say that relationship actually was pretty impactful because, again, it's one that I look back on and reflect on, and there are a lot of qualities about that I look for now in other relationships. Very cool.
So do you think, I mean, like I have my own kind of opinion and perspective on it, and being a middle school, high school teacher, I mean, I see it, but do you think kind of that struggle of finding oneself and that self-identity is something that, you know, middle school, high school girls and even into college and adulthood is an issue that is something that's pretty big in our culture and our society?
Yeah, I think it's huge. And don't get me wrong, you know, no one in middle school and high school is really going to know who they are. Exactly. But it's more, like at least having respect for yourself and honoring like what your needs are. And there's just, so many facets, and especially with social media now and, you know, body image and sexuality and relationships and sex and what that's supposed to look like. And, you know, women, girls especially, are so impressionable. I just think they get a really twisted view about what all of that is, and that can have some really big impacts on how they feel about themselves, their body, their, you know, like I said, that respect for yourself, and that can really pour over into so many areas of your life.
Right. So if you don't mind, Jess, maybe just speaking to if there's you know, a younger girl or, you know, an adult woman that's listening to this podcast, that they're just like, hey, like already like 10 minutes in the podcast, like some stuff's really hitting their heart. Would you just be able to speak to those girls or those females that are kind of resonating already with your story a little bit? How can they take a step or two in the right direction to kind of maybe find themselves or start doing some of that inner work? What are some suggestions that you would have? Yeah,
that's a great one. First, I would say use social media to your advantage, you know, so stop following people that you're comparing yourself to and feeling less than when you come across their pages. Also know that social media is mostly a facade and what you're seeing is not true. I think also looking at who you're surrounding yourself with. You know, it's really easy, especially in middle school and high school, to surround yourself with girls that are so engrossed in, you know, dieting and what your body looks like and what you look like on the outside, rather than maybe talking about what are your goals for the future, or what are the things that make you happy outside of, you know, the aesthetics and the physical. So really, looking at finding those people and having those relationships, and they're there. Those people are out there, but it's really easy to surround yourself with, you know, people that are so sucked into this society and social media and body image and dieting and all of these just like negative things that can really have such a long-term impact. So I would say that. And then the books I talked about in the beginning, I think, are a great place to start too.
Awesome. Very cool. Very good. Great information. So what did post high school look like for you then, Jess?
Yeah. So high school, like I said, you know, it was not like bad by any means. I had, you know, a fun time, and I was probably a little too rowdy and got in some trouble, but
probably most of us are.
You know, it happens. My parents joke that, you know, I'm so, and I think this reflects my personality too. Like you know how I'm feeling. I wear my emotions on my sleeves, and anything I did in high school, like I thought I was hiding it, quote unquote, and I was definitely not. So they joke about that. So I went to James Madison University in Virginia. All right. It's definitely a pretty big party school. So I had a lot of fun. I definitely partied way too much for the first couple of years, as most people do in college.
I did it.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
I'm guilty.
It happens, you know. I still managed to do well and do well in my classes and, you know, get good grades and all of that. But, I think this is when I really started becoming more aware of my body. I mean, I was aware of it in high school and, of course, did the comparison thing, whatever. But when I got into college, I started doing just, like, all these crazy, like, juice cleanses. I took, like, ephedrine before going to the gym. Like, really...
It's pretty hardcore.
Yeah. Or, you know, just, like... really awful things, like anything I could do to try to change my body. So I think college is when that really, really hit. And I majored in psychology. I minored in special ed. I didn't really know what I wanted to do. I mean, as most college kids don't. But I did end up getting my master's in special ed, and I did teach for a few years, which I'm grateful for. I learned a lot from that. And college, same thing though. I jumped around just from like friend group to friend group. You know, I wasn't in a sorority, but I was friends with sorority girls, and I wanted to be in a sorority. And I think even more lost than I probably was in high school. And I really, same thing with just like relationships, with like romantic, sexual, whatever. I just had such this view about using my body to attract people. And so I got into some really like toxic, negative relationships because of that. And because I didn't have the self-respect that I needed, I stayed in a lot of, relationships that they didn't treat me well. I wasn't respected. I didn't feel good, but I still stayed in them because I thought that, well, this is what it's supposed to look like or whatever. And then I actually finally ended up joining the honors fraternity, which that was probably pretty life-changing for me. I met people there that that was the first time I think I finally felt like I had found kind of my place and my people. The people in that fraternity were just really amazing, and they were people that, had goals, outside of just partying and drinking, and they really loved me and appreciated me for all of the amazing qualities that I had, which then helped me start to realize some of those qualities. So that was really helpful for me, is finding that group, and that was sort of the latter half, kind of the last 2 years in college. And that's also when I sort of realized I had a couple just scary experiences with drinking too much and, waking up and like not remembering. And so I didn't stop drinking, but I definitely realized that it wasn't, the amount I was doing wasn't healthy. So I think that's when I kind of started to back off that a little bit. I had this group that I felt really great about. And so that changed things a bit for me and was definitely a way to feel a little bit more grounded, at least in like my college years.
Cool. Now, with the body image stuff, when you were talking about like taking ephedra and doing all this type of juice cleanse and stuff, was your focus on basically just getting skinnier? Was that kind of what it was, or was it something else?
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah, it was just wanting to be skinnier. I would have, an event or something coming up, and I'd freak out about needing to fit into the dress or the jeans or whatever. So yeah, it was all about just wanting to be smaller and thinner. Now,
I want to. We've talked about the relationship thing a couple times, and then obviously what I read in the beginning was an Instagram post of yours. So let's take. I want to go in that direction because that's something even before we turned on the podcast and stuff that we were talking a little bit about, and you said that's a direction that you are starting to move in a little bit, like with your own business and things of that nature, and talking about that a little bit more. And I personally think that singleness and just the whole relationship thing is most people have a very messed up view of that, and there's the divorce rate is crazy and just a lot of issues in regards to relationships going on in our culture and in the world. So Jess, let's just kind of move in that direction, and why don't you expound a little bit on kind of some of what you discovered, like in regards to what you talked about in the Instagram post about yourself, how you deal with kind of the singleness and wanting to maybe be in a relationship and all of that. Like, just start unfolding, unpacking, if you don't mind, some of that personal stuff, that personal work that you've had to go through to kind of just be where you're at today as a woman and a business owner and things like that. Yeah.
So, this is a revelation I've sort of come to in the last year or so, really. And I, we can get more into this, but, like I said, in college and after college, my entire goal was to change my physical body. And up until then, I, again, still really didn't know who Jess was, like what really like fired me up, what my goals were. I got my degree in special ed because I didn't know what else to do. And I started teaching and I enjoyed it, but, it wasn't, looking back, like probably what I was really passionate about. So yeah, my whole life was around like trying to change myself, whether it was my body or how I looked or what I was wearing or, whatever it is. And I had very little respect for myself. I definitely didn't love myself. And so I've really started looking more at the relationships that I've been in and the people that I started attracting. And I've been in some pretty toxic relationships where, not any like physical abuse or anything like that, but just the way they spoke to me and treated me, there was no respect. I felt insecure. I was in situations where, I didn't feel attractive enough. I didn't feel like I was good enough for them. And rather than realizing, why would you ever want to be with someone that made you feel that way? I just would reflect onto myself. Oh, well, maybe I need to change. I need to do this differently. I need to say this differently. Or, oh, if I just wait, he'll realize how much he loves me. Or he just needs space. Or he doesn't know how to express it. All of these insane excuses for these relationships that were, looking back now, if I was ever in that situation, it would be a hard, fast no. Like, I don't deserve this. Right. And I think so many women are wrapped up in that. They're so out of touch with themselves. They don't love themselves. They essentially kind of hate themselves. So how can you ever be in a relationship where you're respected and loved when you don't have the respect and love for yourself? And another thing here is what you believe to be true, you will find proof for. So I truly had this innate belief that I wasn't good enough. I wasn't pretty enough. I wasn't whatever enough to be really loved. So I got in these relationships that proved that to myself. And I kept doing it over and over and over. And I would ask myself, why do I keep attracting these relationships? Why do I keep getting into these relationships? And then I finally realized, well, wow, I hated myself for so long, no wonder I attracted these types of situations. Right. And so I guess that's sort of, I just feel very strongly about this because I think there are so many women that are in this situation and are, in these really unhappy relationships, or again, they keep attracting the wrong people and they don't know why. And I think it's something that just needs to be talked about more because it's so important.
So from my understanding, from what you're sharing about your personal like inner work and growth in this area, and then for myself personally as well, it's all about an individual, man or woman, understanding first of all who they are and what they want, maybe in regards to a relationship, out of life, etc. Is that correct?
It is, yeah. And I think it really, even for me in terms of the relationship thing, I think I'm finally now in a place where I know exactly what I want, and I'm not going to settle for less, and I'm going to walk away if it's not what I want. It started more for me. My last long-term relationship was almost 5 years ago at this point. We were together for almost 4 years. And if I listed all the qualities I would look for now, it would be completely opposite as to what that was. And getting out of that, I think was the first time that I realized getting out of that relationship actually was when I left teaching. It was when I started getting more into nutrition. I moved to Denver a couple of years later. So that was the first time that I realized, oh, wow, I can do these things. I think up until then, I'd been in this relationship for almost 4 years. I was turning 30 years old. And in my head, I thought, oh, I can't just up and leave Boston and leave my job and leave this relationship. I'm 30 years old. Right. And then I realized, well, that's crazy. Why? Like, that has nothing to do with it. So that was definitely a big turning point for me. And it was when I first started, again, getting into more nutrition, holistic health, started doing that with my own self, healing from some physical symptoms I was dealing with, moving to Denver. But even then, I got out here and I ended up in a relationship with someone I was working with. And from right off the bat, I felt insecure about it. And I always felt like I was trying to get him to want to spend more time with me, or get him to want to, make things more serious. And I was just like reaching for this thing and I didn't know what it was. So, even up until a few years ago, I was doing that. And then finally, recently, actually, another book I read, You Are Enough by Mandy Hale. Okay. And that's another one I would recommend for people, especially struggling with specifically relationships and singleness. And, she talks about being in this relationship for years off and on, and all the excuses that she made for why it would work, and some of the ones I already mentioned, like, oh, his emotions are too strong, he just can't express them, or, oh, I just need to give him time, or, oh, no. And those excuses after excuse, and it just resonated so much, and it was a really big wake-up call for me, and I realized that I'd done that so many times, making excuses for people and then blaming myself. Right. So yeah, and then more recently I was seeing someone, not for very long, but it started to get to that place where it wasn't okay with me. I was feeling insecure and things were changing. I didn't know why. And I I ended it right away, and it was really liberating.
Right,
and it's the first time I think I've ever really been like, no, I'm not going to give him space or wait or think, oh, I shouldn't have sent that text or I shouldn't have done this. That's the other thing is, we get into these relationships, and in the beginning, you try to be a different person.
Right,
There's all these rules that you're supposed to follow, and it's such BS. It's like, no, like, this is who I am. I know what I want, and if that's not what you want, then cool, peace out.
Yep. For sure.
I have a lot to offer, and you're lost.
Yeah.
So that was kind of a long-winded. I don't know if that answered the question
but it's great, and that's kind of like, where I've come in my life is like, like I know who I am. I know why I'm on this earth. Like, I know what I'm passionate about. I know what I'm pursuing. I know what I'm chasing after. All that stuff, and that's what I've said. I'm just like, if I hang out with a chick or whatever, it's like, okay, this, like, I'm just like transparent. I mean, people might be like, well, maybe you shouldn't share that.
Yeah.
I'm like, no, it's like, no, I'm gonna share it because like I'm not gonna play games. I don't have time to waste. Either this is gonna work out or it's not. Like I'm kind of like all in or all out, and that's kind of like what I've done. I'm like kind of just lay everything out, and cool. If it's cool, if not, then like you said, peace out. Like, and it's not coming from like a negative place or anger or mean or anything. It's just like life is so short. Like in my estimation, I mean it is, but like I just look at life. It's so short. There's so much to do. Either somebody's gonna like walk with me and run with me and come along, and we're gonna share life together. Or they're not. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it's like, that's just where I'm at, and I think that's kind of like just kind of vibing with what you're sharing is like. But again, it goes back to like we as individuals, as human beings, like the first most important thing, and this comes up like almost in every podcast episode, is like you have to know who you are, and you're not. That's not just gonna like magically pop up in your mind and be like, oh, this is no. It's like no, you have to get quiet. You have to get still. You have to spend that alone time. You have to block out like all the distractions and the noise and say, okay, like who am I? Like what encourages me? What fires me up? And it's not going to happen like in one meditation session. And I don't personally like go into a room and like quote unquote meditate, but just I spend a lot of time alone, and I spend a lot of time thinking, and that's where I've really come to realize like who I am and what I'm passionate about. And again, I can't stress that enough to the listeners and even to myself as a reminder, like, know who you are. And then go out into the world. And as you are somebody that you want to, like, attract, you'll attract those type of people, so. Yeah,
that is such an important message. I've been talking about that whole alone time thing a lot lately, too. People are terrified of being alone.
Absolutely.
They're terrified.
Absolutely, yeah.
I was working with a client recently, and I told her to get in a bath and, like, leave her phone away, and she was like, wait, I can't, like, can I listen to a podcast? It was like terrified to just be by herself. And I think we're also trained as humans to believe that we can't feel our negative emotions.
Right.
So you have these negative emotions and you just ignore them and move past them, and then they just get bottled up and stored inside your body. It's definitely not all butterflies and happiness. And yes, I believe that you can choose to be happy and you create your own happiness, but we're all human, and you also have negative emotions, and feeling those negative emotions and like leaning into them and really digging into where they're coming from rather than just ignoring them is such a huge part to figuring out like who you are at your core. And it's not easy. And that's why a lot of people never do it. This approach to figuring out who you are and just health, quote unquote, overall isn't easy. I can easily walk up to someone and say, here, follow this meal plan and follow this workout routine.
Right.
Cool. And they can probably do it. That's pretty easy.
Yeah.
But when you really have to reflect on yourself and some of the thoughts that you've had, and maybe even take some ownership for where you're at, because those thoughts are yours, that's where it gets really frightening. And that's where people don't want to face it and do the work. And people are going, you just get stuck. Like you have to, you're just going to continue those patterns if you don't.
I don't want to go off on another tangent, but I just, it's like I don't care like what, if you're health and fitness, if you're a real estate agent, if you're a police officer, school teacher, like it's so important, it's so valuable to know like who you are, know your why, because everything starts there. Because if you don't know who you are, if you don't know your why, what you're all about, like you're gonna attract toxic people. You're gonna attract people that are gonna try to take advantage of you.
Yeah.
And like I see that all the time. It happens to guys, but I see a lot with like females. They get sucked into a relationship with a guy. The guy's like manipulative and is just a complete, jerk or whatever. And it's just like, they might end up getting married. They have a kid together, whatever. And it's just like, it's years and years and years. And it's like, you, young lady, should not have to go through that. Like, you're so much more valuable. And it's just like, but you it's just like an alcoholic until they like realize like they have an issue or what's going on. You can't really help them. And so that's why I just want to encourage you, Jess, like, as you said before we started, and we touched on it a little bit ago, is like you're starting to move in this kind of the singleness and relationship stuff a little bit more, and I just want to encourage you to keep that up, because I think that's something that's really powerful and very valuable in our society, especially with the younger people, because of the social media and all the just junk that's getting thrown. So just keep that up. So, awesome. So let's I want to touch on just like you being a SPED teacher. I think you said you taught for like 6 years, was it?
I did, yeah.
Now, I don't want to spend too much time on that, but is there maybe like just maybe one or two lessons or kind of valuable things that you took from those 6 years that have maybe continued to resonate in your life to this day? Yeah,
that's a great question, because I learned so much. Being a teacher, period, you learn a lot, and especially being a special ed teacher. One would be communication, just communicating. I had to communicate with all different people, my students, first and foremost. And those are, obviously I taught 8th grade. So you're going to communicate with an 8th grader a bit different than you're going to communicate with your, friend or family member.
Absolutely.
So it was really, finding ways to connect with them. And every student is different, and really appreciating that and knowing what those differences were and finding ways that I could connect with them on those levels, especially being in special ed, because a lot of kids I worked with, had pretty severe emotional disorders or learning disabilities, and school obviously wasn't a place that they necessarily felt happy and safe.
Right.
So really working with them to find a way to make them feel that, because otherwise they're going to shut down and you're going to get nowhere.
Right.
And then on the other end, communicating with, administrators and parents. And again, just knowing how to go into a meeting, what to say, being able to read the room, read the emotions, read the people. And those are just skills that you need in whatever you're doing in life.
Absolutely, for sure.
And just education in general. I'm an educator at my heart. Even with what I do now, I educate my clients. I don't ever want a client to rely on me for the rest of their life. And so my job is to educate them on, and teach them these tools that they can use, in the future. So I feel like education has just been a part of who I am for a really long time. And that's definitely something I still identify with, even though it's not in the, realm of being in a school.
And I think being able to teach kids is a very valuable tool when the door opens for you to be able to teach, train, mentor adults. Because
absolutely.
At the end of the day, I don't care what anybody says, we're all kids kind of at heart. A lot of times we just have to pay bills and do, that adulting thing on kind of, which is different than the kid thing. But I think people that can really relate to kids and learn some great skills from teaching kids, they're going to be just that much better of a teacher in whatever avenue you want to use that in regards to working with adults.
Yeah, absolutely.
Very cool.
Absolutely.
Now, I just want to touch on something in regards to like parenting and raising healthy kids. So just kind of like with your experience as a teacher and, interacting with the parents and just kind of the state of the unhealthiness in our country with the food and the lack of movement and all that type of stuff. Just, if you don't mind, just talking to the parents right now, if they're in a situation where they kind of want to make a change to have a happier and healthier home and have happier and healthier kids, what's maybe a step or two that they could take to start kind of fostering that within their own family?
Yeah, that's a great one, because it is such a huge need. I think making it a priority. We talked about time. A lot of times families feel they don't have enough time to food prep and make, healthy foods and sit down and have dinner and make the lunches, when really, again, you can create the time. So I really think that's the first step is, if that's what you want, you have to make it a priority and you have to plan out the time to do that, and I think involving kids in cooking and shopping and educating them on what real food is and where food comes from and how what you're eating impacts your health physically, obviously, but also your energy and your mood, so if your kid wants that, cookie or the pound of ice cream or whatever, maybe you give it to them and then later you say, okay, how do you feel? And they can start to make those connections. So that's really powerful too, is helping them make connections between the food and how it impacts them, not just physically, but also mood, energy, sleep, and starting to educate them from a young age.
Great.
I also think we need to be way more aware of just how we're speaking to our kids, especially young girls, and, being really careful with, relating things back to, oh, you look so pretty, or you look so, girls just have this, oh, I should be pretty and I should be quiet and I should follow the rules, right. So being really careful with how the things that we phrase, how can you make them feel strong and empowered and smart and things like that. So I think that's really important too, is focusing on the words that you're using around your kids, and then your own behaviors. Kids pick up on everything. Yep. So if you're a mom and you're weighing yourself every day and you're, stressed about your weight and you're dieting, that is going to, your young girl is going to pick up on that. Or even, as a dad, like how you treat your wife or how you talk to your wife, like your son's going to pick up on that. So I think also just being more aware of your own actions and how that impacts your kids.
Words of wisdom. Love it. Okay, so you were a sped teacher for 6 years, and then so when you were done with the teaching thing, is that kind of when you took a leap into like the health and wellness and fitness and all that, and kind of started your own thing?
Yeah. So when I graduated college, I started running, and initially it was because I wanted to lose weight, but I actually was really good at it, and I talked a little bit, in this podcast that I played sports in high school. Like I did the soccer thing, then I quit. I did lacrosse for 4 years. I was never very good at it. I'd never found anything that I was like really good at. I was actually really good at running. I started running like some half marathons. I've done a couple marathons, and I did enjoy it. So it became this thing that I really liked, and it was the first time I felt like I was really good at something more athletic. And I worked out in college, but took classes and stuff. So yeah, I started running and really enjoyed it, got really into it. I did, my body changed. I did lose quite a bit of weight, and in doing that, I started learning a bit more about food and feeling my body. Up until then, I had been doing like low fat, low sugar, Splenda, like, all this awful, terrible things. Right. So I at least started incorporating like more whole foods, and people just started asking me what I was doing. They're like, you look great. What are you doing? And I really loved talking about it. I enjoyed helping other people. And at the time I got certified to teach spin, and I started teaching spin classes, and I felt so good after those classes, just like doing something that, helped other people kind of lead a healthier life. Now, with all that being said, I developed a really unhealthy relationship with running and food. I became really addicted to it. I would get really anxious if I couldn't get a run in. It became I revolved my entire life around being able to work out. And if I didn't get this workout in, I couldn't eat the certain food. So it became a dangerous place to be. But I still was on this, path of wanting to do something with it. I knew I didn't want to teach forever. I was getting really burnt out. So I did the Institute for Integrative Nutrition, IIN, and that was a good program. They talk a lot about primary food, which is things like your relationships and your spirituality and your hobbies. And I will say that was when I first started to realize, there's so many other parts to your health that you need to focus on. And that being in that program was actually really helped me to finally leave teaching, to finally get out of that relationship I was in, so that was really helpful for me just for that like interpersonal growth. So I did that. And then after that, I started working at a holistic health practice with a girl I went to high school with. She educated me a lot on like hormones and how blood sugar and how food impacts all of that. Yeah. So that's when I really started learning about like thyroid health and adrenal health and gut health. And then my own health was starting to deteriorate. My hair was falling out and thinning. I was, having sleep issues off and on. And that's when I finally started to realize that my body was sending me some pretty strong signals that I wasn't really healthy. Long story short, I was there for about, I think, a year and a half. It was great. It didn't work out. We didn't see eye to eye on some business things. I was living at home. I felt really stuck. I just needed a change. Mm-hmm. So I came out to Denver, and I have some family here. So I stayed with my cousin for a bit. When I got here, I was like, I just need to get like a job. I need some stability. Yeah. So I started working for Zen Planner, a software company. Okay. Again, everything happens for a reason. Amazing people there. I think I attribute a lot of the people there and their just belief in me and support in me for being able to do what I'm doing now.
Right.
So that was really great. And then during all this time, my health really started to go downhill. I started developing some severe digestive issues. I was bloated all the time, constipated, wasn't sleeping. All of a sudden I would like go for a hike and then I was on the couch for the rest of the day. I was so fatigued and exhausted. And then I went through a 6-month period where I gained 20 pounds out of nowhere. So my body was just like all over the place. And that's when I just was like, Jess, like what you're doing is not working. So I'd made a lot of other changes in terms of like my diet and things, but that's when I really had to start reflecting on what I was doing to my body. You know, I was over exercising, I was undernourishing, and I just had to take a huge step back. Yeah. So I did get some help. I have another friend in the area who's NTP, and I started working with her. I did some testing and found out I had severe adrenal fatigue. I had a parasite. So that's when I started really recognizing that I had to make some serious changes just in general, you know, with how I was treating my body and how I felt about myself. And that's when I really started digging into some of that. So through that whole journey is probably when so the NTP program, I'd heard of it, wanted to do it, always kept saying, I can't afford it, it's not the time. And then finally, if not now, then when? I was like, I just got to do this. So I did it. And I graduated in November, and same thing. I said, you know what, I was trying to build my business, and I was in school, and I was at Zen Planner, and I was trying to do all the things, and I was burning myself out. And at this point, things at Zen Planner had really started to change. The company got bought out. The culture was really changing. Yeah. It was just to the point where that burnout, where I was exhausted at the end of every day just because I was not fulfilled in any way by what I was doing. And I just said, it's time. So I left and created my business, and I've been doing this full time since October.
Cool. So it's pretty recent, new then, huh?
New full time. Yeah. It's funny because it's like I was doing a little bit of my own health coaching when I first did all this like 5 years ago. And so I had a website and I had my business name. When I started working at that holistic practice, I had to sign a non-compete. So I kind of let it all go to the wayside. Okay. And then, and then at Zen Planner, when I kind of decided, knew that I wanted to move forward with it, I revamped my website. I, rebuilt my Instagram and, started doing all of that. And just, it's funny too. I always told myself that I didn't want my own business. Looking back, I was just terrified that I would fail. Right. And that was an excuse I kept telling myself, I don't want my own business. I don't know what I want to do with this, but I know I don't want my own business. And it was just because I was so scared of failing or, investing in something that didn't work out. All of these just beliefs that I had about myself. Right. So that's interesting to reflect on too. Yeah. So
basically it sounds like last fall is when you went all in with the nutrition thing. Is that correct?
Yeah.
So just share with myself and the listeners just the importance of, if you want something in life, whether it is, a business or pursuing a passion or a dream, just speak about the importance of being all in.
It's scary as hell. And I'm not going to say it's easy. None of this is easy. None of the things I've done, health, relationships, business, but you have to believe in it. And like I said, we talked a little bit about this earlier, what you believe to be true will become your reality. I told myself for so long I didn't want my own business, so I couldn't have my own business, or I didn't have the means to do it. So I proved that to myself in every way possible. When you flip that and you go all in and believe you can do it, that's when you're going to start to prove to yourself that you can. And like I said, you're going to be forced to find the resources. I'm not going to end up on the street because I'm going to be forced to figure it out. Absolutely. And that's when you really start to make some big changes, and I think that applies to whether it's you want to create your own business, whether you feel like you want to get healthier, whether you want to attract that relationship, you want to go on that dream vacation, whatever it is, just do it. Figure it out.
If not now, when? Right?
Yeah, exactly.
Beautiful,
Exactly.
Beautiful. So in regards to being a nutritional therapy practitioner, what is kind of the overall kind of like nutritional philosophy with that label?
Yeah. So the NTP program is very much based off of Weston A. Price. He was a dentist, actually, who was the first person to ever do research on how food impacted our health. Okay. And he actually went to all these different cultures and he used their teeth health to identify like their overall health. And he started pulling in these different factors around the ones that had healthier teeth were the ones that were, eating real foods and eating healthy animal products and, just kind of these different lifestyle factors. So the program is based off of his studies and a couple other, studies that were similar. And the whole premise is getting to the root cause of health and disease. and you look at the foundations of your health, things, really simple things like digestion and hydration, and, then of course looking at, a little bit deeper things like the endocrine system and immune system. And so it's really focusing on the foundations of health to get to the root of the problem rather than just masking it with, pills and whatever else.
Yeah. So it's like more of a holistic approach to nutrition and health then, right?
Yeah. Okay. Yep. So it's a holistic, real food approach. So again, looking at, eating real whole foods, getting your essential fatty acids, getting your hydration, supporting your gut health. And then they talk a lot about just how it all ties in together. 100%. It's just, full circle. But yeah, it's definitely a holistic approach.
Now, you mentioned some of your own health struggles and stuff with the digestion, and then you gained the 20 pounds just like, kind of like overnight, so to speak, and then just some of the hormone stuff. So what steps did you have to take, Jess, for your own personal like kind of health issues or health struggles to kind of right that ship and kind of get moving in the right direction? Yeah,
it was a long process that I'm honestly still working on. There's still some lingering gut issues I'm trying to figure out. For me, a big one was the exercise. I was over-exercising, specifically doing a ton of cardio. And I was just sending these signals to my body. And, we won't get too much into the science, but I've learned a lot from Mind Pump specifically is, especially women, we get wrapped up in, I want to lose weight, so I'm just going to start doing a ton of cardio and restrict my calories. Well, that's a great way to get your metabolism in a place where it's going to slow down. You're going to gain weight more easily, and you're going to have a really hard time losing it. So it was educating myself on that. So I took a huge step back. I stopped running altogether, which was really hard for me because that was my identity. And that also, though, forced me to, find other things that were my identity because I had it so wrapped up in this one thing. And B, my God, the amount of time that you have freed up when you're not exercising 6 to 7 days a week, an hour a day is pretty amazing. So that was a big thing. I really took a huge step back from exercise. I stopped doing cardio altogether. I started strength training a couple times a week. So I got really into barbell work and weights and, learning the benefits of that, which was really helpful for me. I had, making sure I was nourishing my body and eating enough food. And that was tough because I still had some fears around foods and fears around, now I'm exercising less and I'm trying to eat more. It's a scary place to be. Right. So it was a slow process, and it was a lot of, again, working through these limiting beliefs I had around food and my body and exercise. So those are two of the biggest things. Also, just like stress management in general. I don't handle stress well. I've known that for a really long time, and I put a lot of pressure on myself all of the time. Right. Whether it's, to be perfect at my job or be perfect in, like running all the time or, just being this certain person. I have a lot of inner pressure. So it was also a lot of, finding ways to relieve that stress, finding ways to have compassion for myself and just slowing down and, taking the time, whether it's a meditation practice. I did a lot of walking. That was amazing for me. So I would walk and listen to podcasts or YouTube or, just to bring cortisol levels down and, come back to myself and let my mind shut down. So those were some of the big ones. And then, I had to deal with, I was on some protocols for the adrenal fatigue and just supporting my adrenals and, supporting my gut health in those ways as well. But those are some of like the biggest steps probably.
Now, you're a yoga instructor. So was yoga and has yoga been a very big part of kind of that transition into a healthier state for you as well?
Yeah, it has, especially when I got into it, I was doing the running. So it was really nice to have, like something that was not running, that was a little bit slower. That being said, I teach at Core Power and it's heated power yoga. Okay. So I think got to a place where it was, I'm going to run less, but now I'm just going to do like 3 really hot power yoga classes instead. And I did that for a long time. So yeah, yoga has definitely helped me. I love teaching it. Even teaching makes me feel more grounded and just being able to like share that energy with other people and connect with other people really helps me out. So yeah, that has been really helpful, but I also have been aware there have been times where I've had to go out and look for a more like restorative yin class as opposed to doing like the hot power class. Right. So yes, it has been a really, helpful part. But again, I think we just have to be really aware of what our body needs at certain points and making sure that we're like, listening to that.
Yes. And that's something I know again, been brought up a couple times, and we've touched on in previous podcast episodes, is just individuals being in touch with themselves. And again, it kind of all ties in, everything does, going back to like knowing who you are. But, you know, like for me, and I've talked about this on several podcasts, like having a bodybuilding background and you know, being a bodybuilder, it's like you can go in and you can just mindlessly move the weight. But for me, what I love to do, and I believe is the best approach when you're trying to build muscle and things like that, is having that mind to muscle connection. And I think that doesn't apply just in the gym when you're doing, you know, a squat or a barbell curl or something like that, but just in life, moving, being present and being one with your body is very powerful. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, absolutely. And you know, it's funny. So another thing that happened that I didn't mention is I when all this was going on, I didn't get my period for over 2 years. Wow. So that was another really big thing that I dealt with. Yeah. And so I work with a lot of women who are in that place. And there is this whole mindset in books around, like, if you are dealing with, you know, and hypothalamic amenorrhea specifically when have been over exercising and under eating. Right. And there's this philosophy where, like, if you want to heal from HA, you have to stop movement and working out altogether. And I don't personally believe that. Like, I was able to recover with still moving, and I've had clients recover with still incorporating movement. It's being mindful about the movement that you're doing and listening to the signals your body is sending. Another thing with that is people get so dogmatic about exercise. You know, it's like, oh, I have to go to CrossFit on Monday, Tuesdays, and Fridays, and I have to do spin on this day and yoga on this day. Your exercise is going to change, you know, based on what you're going through. I mean, exercise is a stress. Like, I know people use it as a stress relief, but when it comes down to it, it is a stress on the body. Absolutely. So if you're going through a really bad breakup, or you just lost your job, or you're under a lot of stress, your exercise probably is going to look different than if you're in a place where you're feeling really good and everything's in check. So that's something people really need to keep in mind and become more aware of too, is that it's okay for your exercise to change. And actually, it probably should change, because what you're doing now might not work 3 months from now. Absolutely. And that's like totally normal.
Human beings evolve. Yeah. And so we need to evolve along with, you know, the movement, the nutrition. I know as I've gotten older and moved into my 30s and stuff, like foods that I ate in my 20s, they mess up my stomach. And I've always had, you know, struggled with like constipation and just, you know, different, I think it's kind of a genetic thing because it runs in the family. But I mean, it's just like some of the foods I've always eaten, like peanut butter and things like that. I mean, over the last year or two, I found out like I can't eat that stuff because it really messes up my gut. It messes up my stomach. So it's like we evolve as humans, and you know, we change maybe where we live, different environments. It's like, again, a quote that's been big for me is like, if you always do what you've always done, you always get what you've always got. And so, you know, it's like we have to, again, be in tune with our bodies. We have to be in tune with ourselves and understand, like, as we are evolving, getting older, things are changing on the inside. Like, you know, we might not be able to exercise as much or in the way that we always have. We might not be able to eat the foods that we've always enjoyed eating because things change. And just being in tune with ourselves and all of that, those processes is very important.
Yeah, and people are so out of touch with their bodies and themselves. Yeah. Another thing I really recommend, and I haven't talked about this yet, is journaling. You know, and for a lot of reasons. If you're dealing with a lot of limiting beliefs or self-hate or whatever, just getting those out on paper, you know, getting them out of your mind. But I also advocate for journaling, you know, write down what you're eating every day and then keep track of your mood, you know, your energy, your libido, your sleep, your digestion, your bowel movements, like all these things that we have pretty much on a daily basis never think about unless we're actually taking the time to write them down. So I have all of my clients do that so that you can start to make those connections with yourself. And then also journaling in the sense of just, you know, what thoughts you have going on in your mind, you know, writing down your goals, your gratitude, all of those things. So journaling is definitely another thing I advocate highly for.
You're speaking right to me, because that's something actually I had written down to talk to you about is writing, because it now having over 30 interviews with the podcast, I've been starting to think about, like, okay, what are some commonalities with my guests, because all of my guests have something to do with health and fitness. A lot of them are, you know, just high performing, high level entrepreneurs and athletes, and you know, I've interviewed some professional athletes and things like that. I'm like, okay, so what are some common things that keep coming up? And one of the common things that keeps coming up is the the importance and value in writing, journaling, however you want to say it. I mean, it's writing. It's putting words to paper or on the computer, on your phone. But that's one thing that I've come up with. And writing for me is such an integral, powerful part of my life, because it's a way that I express my feelings and my emotions, the deep stuff that's inside of me. And once I do that, get it on paper, it's like I can release it and move on. Yeah. So that's great. And even for me, like I write down all my food, and I'm kind of anal about all that. But again, it's like I can go back to a journal from 4 years ago and see what I was eating. Yeah. Or, if I'm starting to, have issues with my gut and things of that nature, bowel movements with the foods I'm currently eating, well, I can go back 6 months and be like, well, I wasn't having these issues. You know what I mean? I can look at the foods, and it's just like, it's just that it's all there. Yeah. So I don't have to like try to figure out, it's like, well, why don't we try these foods? And but yeah, writing is very powerful, and I think especially for people that are trying to change their life and make these adjustments in life, it can be really overwhelming. And I would just encourage you, if you're in that place, to start journaling, start writing, getting some of those emotions and thoughts, and whether they're positive, negative, whatever, just get it on a piece of paper, and you will see that once you get that on the paper or in the phone or on the computer, you're releasing them, and you can continue to kind of just move in that direction. And if you are trying to change, if you're trying to make adjustments in life, whether it's health or business or relationships, like write down like what you want, what you don't want, because when you write things down, it holds greater value, because a lot of stuff just kind of gets clogged and lost in our mind, But
getting really clear on what you want.
Yes, clarity. Clarity is important.
Huge.
That's kind of the theme of what we've been talking about all the time. Just like knowing yourself, clarity, vision. We need it. It's very important. So,
I have some clients write an apology letter to their bodies.
Cool. Okay.
And that's a tool if you're dealing with some just body image or self-love issues. It's pretty powerful.
Awesome. Okay, so we've been going for a little over an hour, Jess, so we'll kind of start moving in the direction of finishing up here. Cool. Couple things I still want to touch on is just talk about you being the creator of being the creator of the Liberated Woman Method. Kind of what is that? What does that entail? And just go ahead and share about that if you don't mind.
Yeah, I'm glad you asked this. So this is, my business, even though it hasn't been full-time for that long, it's already kind of changed, and there's just this direction I want to go in, and the Liberated Woman Method is the method that I use now with my clients, because we've talked about relationships, we've talked about body image, we've talked about nutrition. When it really comes down to it, first of all, there's kind of 3 pillars that I've identified that you really kind of need in place. There's now I'm gonna blank on what they are.
It's okay.
3 pillars. I'll get back to what they are. Yeah. But what it comes back to is this core identifying who you are and then loving that person. Because when you do that, you're going to want to feed yourself nutritious foods that make you feel good. You're going to want to do movement that makes you feel good. You're going to have the respect and confidence to achieve the goals that you want to achieve. You're going to have the respect to attract the relationships that you want to attract. So, it's like I was working with people on their nutrition. They'd come for me for, gut health or having this history of over-exercising, but then we'd dive in, and then all these limiting beliefs would come up, and then we'd realize, and they're not happy in their relationships, and they're not happy in their job. So it's just sort of bringing it full circle and bringing it all together, where I really want to liberate women from feeling trapped, whether it's trapped in their own mind or trapped in their bodies or trapped in a relationship or trapped in a job that they hate. And you really have to address all these different areas in order to do that. So it's really taking my clients and walking them through this process. It'll be a 90-day process. So I'm with them, the whole time, and walking through those pillars. And within each pillar, there's, certain things. So it's looking at nutrition and looking at your relationship with food, looking at your movement and your exercising. Talk about what what are your goals? Do you even know what your goals are? What relationships are you looking for, and what are your needs in those relationships? And again, do you even know what those needs are? And so it's just this, full process where, yes, I want to help people become healthier. And if you're dealing with bloating or sleep issues or amenorrhea, I want to help you recover from that. But I also want to help you recover from so much more. Absolutely. And get to this place where you are literally liberated to live this life that you want to live, and live the life that I know you can live. Mm-hmm. So, so that's kind of my new approach.
Yeah. So is it like it's going to be kind of like a program or like a class, or if somebody's like interested in finding more out about that, like what is it then?
Yeah, so as of now, it'll be working with me one-on-one.
Okay.
So it's a 90-day, program, but one-on-one right now. I think down the road I will probably create like a group program where I can help, people in a group. But for right now, it's one-on-one, 90 days. And the cool thing with this is the way I'm setting it up is I'm only going to be taking about 5 or 6 clients at a time because I really want to invest and like be with them and present with them and really be able to support them in all of this.
Very good.
So that's what it looks like right now. And I'm going to offer 2 different options. One will be just like the one-to-one, and so it would involve, weekly calls, communication with me between sessions. And I'm going to have sort of an elite offer where I actually, as part of what they're paying, they get access to some different essential oils that I like to use, some of the books that we mentioned, some other things that can just kind of help them through the process, which I'm excited about.
Now, another thing here quickly that I want to touch on is just being open, honest, and authentic. I was listening to one of your podcast episodes, and I think you had mentioned that, or maybe it's in the write-up about your podcast. But what is the importance and value, Jess, in being open, being honest, being authentic, first of all with yourself and then those around you?
Yeah, and then health, love, and lifestyle. Those are the 3 pillars I was blanking on.
Okay, perfect. Got it. Awesome.
Oh, yeah. This is another one. I just feel, and it's a lot of things, I think, because of social media, because we're trying to, reflect being a certain way, we're really lacking authenticity in terms of just like we're afraid to be who we really are. And I just think communication in general has really shut down, especially like we were talking about in relationships, just have the respect to communicate and be honest with each other and be honest, whether it's a romantic relationship or a friendship or whatever. I just think, especially with social media and texting and everything, we're able to just hide behind that now.
Yeah.
And so it's really hard to find people that are really just honest and are able to communicate and share that with you. And I think that's where authenticity comes in. I think authentic, it's a word that's kind of thrown around a lot. But it really comes down to having the ability to communicate and be honest about who you are, B, what your needs are, and C, what you want in life, what your goals are. And I just think we get so wrapped up in thinking people are leading these lives that are perfect, especially looking on Instagram and doing that comparison trap. So yeah, that's just really important to me. I really try. Even in my business, I'm not perfect. Like I said, I still have some gut issues I'm dealing with. And, I still have days where I put on a pair of pants and I don't feel great in them.
Right.
And that's another thing that is okay. Like loving yourself and, loving yourself at the core, it doesn't mean that you love every part of yourself every single day. Like, we're human. So I also really want to send that message. And I go through times like, right now I've been a little bit more stressed out and I've, gained a little bit of cortisol weight because cortisol will do that. Right. So, I know that I want to get back in the gym and work out hard and maybe, change my body a little bit. But I know right now I need to focus on keeping myself healthy. But that's okay too. And I think there's this stigma around, again, like to love yourself, it means you can't want to change anything about yourself and you have to love every part of yourself every single day.
Right.
And that's just not realistic. So I like to be really open and honest about that. And so I personally like to talk about that with my audience because if I am going through something, I'm going to share it because I'm not perfect. Nobody is.
Right.
And I just think that's such an important message.
And that makes you that much more relatable to your audience or who you're trying to reach, right?
Yeah, exactly.
So
exactly.
Cool. All right. So is there maybe a favorite place or spot in Colorado that you've visited or you like to go often that if somebody's going to come out to Colorado or lives in the area already that you would maybe suggest to check out?
That's a good one. I mean, I love hiking, so I've gone a lot of different hikes. I go to Mount Falcon Park quite a bit.
Okay, cool.
It's in Morrison, and Morrison is another just cute little town. It's a pretty, it's only like an hour probably round trip. The one you can do a longer version. But I don't know, something about that place I really enjoy. I'll go there and do it myself a lot. It's pretty inclined in the beginning and then it kind of flattens out at the top and then it's kind of downhill. So it's a hike that I like to, just an easy one I can do, in the morning, during the week type of a thing. So that's a spot I really enjoy. And then Boulder, I love in and
Boulder
around
is
Boulder.
cool.
You got to get there. In Denver itself, this is going to sound funny, but especially in the summer, I love Avanti, the roof deck.
Okay.
They also have just really great food, like all kind of local and fresh and a bunch of different options. And the view up there is just amazing. I will say, I don't like to go there at night. It gets a little rambunctious, not my scene. But during the day on a nice afternoon in Denver, that is one of my favorite spots in Denver, at least.
Cool.
Yeah.
Very cool. All right. So let's see. Just one other thing before I ask the last question in regards to debunking fitness myths. There's a lot of nonsense in our little niche of health and fitness. What is it's like if somebody's out there and they're just kind of starting to take that step into health and fitness and wanting to get healthier, and again maybe going back to the kind of the family thing and parents wanting to have a healthier family, kids and all that, where can people go? Because if you go to Instagram, you're going to get all kinds of stuff. You go to Google, you're going to get all kinds of stuff. What's maybe just one place or a couple places that you would suggest? And maybe there have been some mentors that you've had, or podcasts, whatever, books, just maybe a couple actionable steps that people can say, hey, you know what? I can go there and find some reliable information in regards to health and fitness.
Yeah, Mind Pump Media is awesome.
Yep,
those guys, they've got the podcast, they've got their free guides, so that's a really great one. That's a good question. I can't think of any other places specifically for tools. What I would say though is it shouldn't, being healthy and feeling good in your body shouldn't be agonizing.
Right.
You shouldn't have to run yourself into the ground. It shouldn't take over your life. I have a friend who her tagline is the body is the bonus. When you're taking care of yourself and nourishing yourself and getting good sleep and all of that, the body, it just comes, naturally. So, I think all the ones I mentioned in the beginning, like Max Lugavere, like I said, he's all about just healthy lifestyle. He has a book called Genius Foods. That's really great. So I really think just focusing on just all aspects of your health and really getting that information. Mark Hyman is another one. I know he has a podcast that has a lot of really good information. Would be another great resource. A lot of
awesome books I've read.
Yeah, all of his books are amazing. So that would be another go-to. And then even people like, Tim Ferriss, I think has some Tools of Titans. He's got information in there about, all sorts of things.
Absolutely.
So I think those are probably my go-to just for people in the industry that are trying to spread the right message.
Yeah, and just to go along with what we were talking about just a minute ago about that being open, honest, and authentic. If you are trying to get quote unquote healthier and just maybe change your lifestyle, just follow the people and pay attention to the people that are telling the truth. And we all can see through the nonsense in life. A lot of people, if they're standing in front of their Lamborghini with their shirt off to show their six-pack all the time, it's probably not their Lamborghini, and the picture could be photoshopped or whatever. So just find people that in your inner being you connect well with, and that they're being open and real. And I think that's something in any industry or any avenue of life, is look for those people and surround yourself with, follow the people, pay attention to the people that are just speaking the truth. They're just being raw and real. So, and
there's no quick fix. So stop trying to find it, because it doesn't exist.
Yeah, you can't take a pill. You can't. Spend 5 minutes on something and expect big results. It's an endurance event for sure. So, all right, Jess. So last question I have for you, and then we will wrap things up here. What sets your soul on fire?
Ooh, that's a good one. Honestly, connection.
Connection? Cool.
Yeah. Anytime I get off a client call, I am just so filled with energy, and connecting with people, whether it's clients, other people in this industry, the friendships I've created. I just think connection is so important, and it's something a lot of people are really lacking. And I've noticed that, especially with creating my own business and doing a lot of things on my own, I realized I wasn't getting enough of that connection, and I was starting to feel really drained. So I've really identified that connection for me, deep connection, sets my soul on fire, energizes me, moves me in the direction I need to be moved in.
Yeah, and that's something, again, going back to just the whole health thing, is we are more connected through social media and the internet than we ever have been in the history of mankind, but we have more anxiety and depression and those type of things because of the lack of connection that we've ever had in history. So and true. It's because there's a difference between that being connected with somebody through a phone or a computer than actually looking somebody in the eyes and having that human right in your face connection, that touch. Like we were made, we were put on this earth, however you want to word that, you know, to have that touch, to have that look in the eyes, to have, you know, real conversation face to face. And I mean, I see it as in being a teacher and stuff, it's like, you know, these young kids and even like people our age and in their 30s and stuff, it's like a lot of them, they don't know how to look somebody in their eyes. They don't know how to look at you in the face and have a conversation. It's either if they do have a phone, their face is at the phone, or if they don't have a phone, they're looking down at the ground. You know, there's just a disconnect of being able to communicate with words, and so that human connection is very important for overall health. And I've heard about studies and people talking about like human connection and positive relationships is actually like the most important thing to longevity over nutrition and movement and everything else that we try to preach about and talk about. It's human connection. If you have great human connection, if you have great relationships, you have great family and friends, like you're on your way to great health. Even if you don't eat the best, if you don't you know, move, all that stuff's important, but that human connection, those positive relationships is very powerful. So, all right, Jess, that kind of wraps everything up for today. Now, before I kind of do my outro here, if you just want to share with the listeners like your Instagram handle, if there's a website or anything else where people can follow you and get in touch with you, go ahead and share that stuff if you don't mind.
Awesome. Yeah. So I'm most active on Instagram. I'm at Jess Pure Living. My website is jessicachristin.com, so you can pop on there, learn more about my story, learn more about the services that I offer. I definitely do seminars in and around Denver, so those are usually on my website or on my Instagram. But yeah, those are the places mainly to connect with me. I love hearing from people, so please reach out, message me. You know, I'm like I said, I'm pretty good about getting back to people right away, especially on Instagram. So
now, what's before we started the podcast, you mentioned a seminar in regards to like maybe singleness or something that's coming up. You want to talk about that?
Yeah. So I'm doing a seminar at American Cultures on, let me look at the calendar really quick here. I believe it's going to be on May 22nd or 23rd. I have to double check, but I'll have all the details on my Instagram. But yeah, it's going to dig more into what we've been talking about relationships. So if you're someone who's single and have been getting frustrated and feel like you keep attracting the wrong people, the wrong relationships, it's really going to dig into why that might be happening. So we're going to talk about some limiting beliefs around dating and relationships that you might have, how to get really clear about what your needs are and feel really empowered about having those needs met. You know, talk about being real in the beginning and, you know, ridiculousness of having to follow these rules. Right. So I'm really going to kind of educate on some tools that women can start using right now if they are feeling a little bit stuck and frustrated in that area. And even if I know I've talked to a couple of women that are like, oh, I'm not really dating right now. Even if you're not dating right now, you know, these are tools that will help you. So the next time you start to date or the next time you start to look for relationships, you'll have these tools so that you can start to attract the right person.
Awesome. Absolutely. Cool. All right. So listeners, I just want to thank you again for hanging out with myself and Jess on the 127 Fit podcast. If you guys want to reach out to me, you can find me on Instagram at 127 Fitness. Facebook is at Quentin Vars. And then if you guys could do me a huge favor, if you could please like, subscribe, share, and then most importantly, leave a review, especially in the iTunes, Apple podcast app. That helps with the whole podcast world and people being able to find the podcast and enjoy the awesome guests that we have on the 127 Fit podcast. If you think you would be an awesome guest, or if you have some suggestions for some people in the state of Colorado Springs, Denver, Boulder area that you think would just be great guests for the podcast and kind of be able to just to jam out with myself in regards to health and fitness and wellness, you can send me an email at 127fit@gmail.com. I've had somebody here just recently, a holistic doctor in Denver, send me an email, And some people have reached out to me wanting to be on the podcast through Instagram. So again, whether it's that email, Instagram, Facebook, just get a hold of me and we'll go from there. I'm always looking for awesome guests to share their story. And then if you guys are just finding great value in this podcast and the guests that I'm having on here, if you guys want to maybe start just sharing the episode or episodes that you're listening to, and then just put the hashtag on there as you share that, be someone to follow. That's kind of the quote. That's kind of the whole gist and impetus behind 127 Fit, 127 Fitness, is to be someone to follow, to be that leader, to be that example. So just start using the hashtag, be someone to follow. And per the usual, I will leave you with Proverbs 24:10, which states, if you faint in the day of adversity, your strength is small. This time, until next time, I will catch you guys later.